Alrighty, yo, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Mr. DDG94, back with another reaction video. Today, we're going to react to Remember Wolverine and the X-Men? I kind of do. I think this was on CW Kids in the morning for like a little bit, then they took it off. It was on there for a little bit. I do remember Wolverine having a show on CW Kids, bro. Wake up in the morning, I used to see the show. This show was actually interesting. It was actually pretty good. But then it just wasn't on there no more. It is what it is. But anyway, so without further ado, let's get right into this.
Wait, remember Wolverine and the X-Men? It was a short-lived animated Marvel series that put Wolverine front and center into a story involving himself and a solid cast of X-Men characters, as Logan has to take charge and rebuild the team after something pretty major happens. Much like within the show, where a couple major key players from the X-Men disappear as a result of what happened, the show itself befell a pretty sad fate of also disappearing. So let's take a look into that mystery, see why that is, as we also look into the show itself and see how Wolverine and the X-Men brings in a lot of really cool ideas for a series that focuses on the character dynamics just as much as it does on the fun and intense action. I guess we shall find out why the show just couldn't cut it. And that line was so bad, maybe I should cut that. Right at the start of the series, we waste no time getting into the setup for this X-Men story as we see that Logan, the Wolverine, look, maybe one viewer out there doesn't know that, okay? I know it's obvious for the 99% of people who know that, but there might be one person out there who I just didn't want to confuse. You're welcome, Derek from Caldwell, Idaho. We see that Logan is struggling through these nightmares of an awful event that took place slightly prior to the events of the show. While he is currently on his own doing his own Wolverine thing, he sees the visions of that fateful day that changed the X-Men forever, or at least for now. We see that Logan is in the midst of leaving the mansion, but the events of the day take a pretty harsh turn when Professor Xavier and Jean Grey end up suddenly in extreme head pain, ending in a massive explosion where both of them are gone. Aside from how traumatic of an event this is, some of the X-Men themselves aren't really on the best of terms with one another, at least for a few of the major players, and they all kind of take a page from Logan's book and all go their separate ways. Now, after some time has passed, the view of mutants in the world has gotten worse and worse to the point that a new government agency called the Mutant Response Division was created to essentially capture these deemed dangerous mutants. Logan ends up helping save this girl, and while the family sees him as a hero and want to give him a place to stay and rest up for the night as a thanks, other humans do not, and end up bringing the MRD to their front door as they end up arresting and detaining the family for not giving up Logan. He then ends up putting back on his Wolverine outfit and tries his best to save the family before they get hauled away, but it was too late. Logan then heads back to what's left of the X-Mansion, where he finds Beast still around and working in an underground lab, as Logan then recruits Beast to help him break into the facility holding the mutants and now his family. As their plan works, the family is rescued along with the group of mutants that were there, and by the way, we get to see some pretty cool and unique mutants show off their powers here, and can I just say that the character Dust is pretty dang awesome, and the way her powers are animated were really cool. In the end, after the day is saved, Logan and Beast talk about what they fear is coming, as Logan mentions their next step is to bring back the X-Men. And that's what leads you fully into this story, and it's done in such a fantastic way that offers so many questions.
Yeah, I remember this, bro. Yeah, bro. That first episode had me drawn in. I was like, yo, this shit heat, bro. What the fuck? Yo, they brought the X-Men back in cold fashion, bro. This shit heat right here, bro. On everything, bro. I was interested in the morning. I wake up early in the morning. I done woke up early in the morning. I'm half-ass awake and shit. I just turned my TV on just to turn my TV on and shit. I'm half-ass awake. All of a sudden, I see new Wolverine X-Men starting now on CW Kids. Yeah, bro. This shit drew me the fuck in right there for the first episode. This shit was heat right here.
And puts Logan as the Wolverine to be put in this leadership role of building the X-Men team back up. I also want to say that Steve Blum has the perfect voice for the character, pretty much being the main voice for him in nearly every adaptation since the 2004 X-Men video game X-Men Legends. Aside from Hugh Jackman's portrayal of the character and even Cal Dodd's for voicing the character in several adaptations, I definitely think that Steve has done an iconic run of embodying him. He's even voiced him most recently in the newly released video game Marvel Rivals rivals, and I hope that he is going to be the voice of the character when they announce who is doing so in the future Insomniac video game simply titled Wolverine. Anyways, from this opening moment in the series, we set forth on a pretty lore-heavy journey to stop a potential future from happening.
Wolverine and the X-Men is coming up next. Mutant power continues.
Wolverine and the X-Men started coming together in 2007 and would first start releasing in Canada in September of 2008, ahead of the US, who would get the series in January of 2009, as it would premiere on Nickelodeon's sister channel, Nicktoons, just a few months before another Marvel show would come to Nicktoons, with that being Iron Man Armored Adventures. That was a pretty interesting show.
I remember this being on CW, bro. Nah, bro, I remember this being on CW, bro. Because I woke up early in the morning and saw this shit on CW Kids, bro. This shit was heat.
In its own right. Check out my video on it if you want to learn more about it, but Wolverine and the X-Men would have a strong focus on building up great characters in a larger story. As Logan ends up building the new X-Men team and rescuing more mutants from captivity, the bigger picture of what's at stake comes into play after the group finds Xavier, whose body was now in Genosha, the mutant nation ran by Magneto, who, while serving as one of the series' big bad guys for where the plot heads, lets the X-Men take Xavier's body back to be placed in proper care with them, as he is in a coma. And there might be some ulterior motives with this, but you know. But here is where I think the story really gets interesting, and that's when Xavier contacts Wolverine and the X-Men telepathically through his own comatose body, as he has awoken from his coma 20 years in the future, seeing how awful this apocalyptic future truly is, and now warns the others of what they need to prevent from happening. So the goal of stopping a future where mutants barely exist as these Sentinels oversee it begins. Every storyline that we do end up following starts bringing in more pieces to the puzzle as it all starts culminating together at the end. Characters like Cyclops or Nightcrawler or Rogue, just to name a few, have their own setups that focus on other aspects of the story to naturally unveil themselves to their importance in the overall plot. Through their individual stories, like Cyclops trying to figure out what happened to Jean, or Nightcrawler learning about what Magneto is really up to, or Rogue giving us a chance to see how the further anti-mutant sentiment and eventual Registration Act come into play. At first, it does feel like there are so many angles and avenues to focus on, but the more information and time you get with each path we focus on all ultimately start intersecting with one another, bringing certain story elements into form larger key moments or key understandings of where the series ends up at. The series will have some spots where it will kind of start diverging from the main plot in a way, but honestly, if that means Logan gets to fight the Hulk or even the Silver Samurai, then hey, who am I to complain? Because even if they aren't as important to the overall story, the action is still pretty top tier, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. In some instances, I do feel that these moments do good for Logan as a character because of the situation he has now been put in. With the series focusing on Logan being this leader or frontman to the group, something that outside of the Fox movies introducing isn't really a thing for the character, it's a challenge for him to overcome, giving a majority of the episodes a focus on dealing with his relationships to other X-Men and mutant characters, as some like Rogue tell him to his face that he can't be a leader if he's never there, which was part of their fight at the beginning of the series when he was going to get ready to leave again and she felt abandoned by him. The series having this perspective and telling a story of how a character who isn't built to be a tactical leader has to learn as he goes so that he can do what he can with this leading position. So while the movies just have him pretty much front and center for several other reasons, Wolverine and the X-Men does its best at trying to explain how he could, giving him complications to overcome along the way to make it feel as realistic as possible for someone like Logan. And also, speaking of this Hulk cameo in the series, it's actually the continuation to another thing that happened with animated Marvel properties, specifically being the Hulk versus short films, Hulk versus Thor and Hulk versus Wolverine. The story for Hulk versus Wolverine has Wolverine being sent into a town that was thought to have been destroyed by the Hulk, this town being Elkford in British Columbia. Wait, hold on. That's the exact town that Braceface takes place in, and now it's destroyed? Well, at least we know what has happened to Sharon Spitz after that show has ended. I literally just did a video on that series. Anyway, the movie here is important to the fact that it sets up a lot of backstory regarding Weapon X, which gets brought into the show itself. But more importantly, episode 7 of the series, Wolverine versus the Hulk, serves as this direct sequel, having Nick Fury set things up and connect these two separate pieces of media together. And I think that's pretty cool. And this goes beyond this too if you really want to start connecting things together, like having Wolverine a part of the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes show, as it would still align with his character in Wolverine and the X-Men. It's also the same voice actor, which then then can be connected to the Spider-Man from Spectacular Spider-Man. But this whole web of speculation of if these all truly do connect or not is thanks to co-writers of Wolverine and the X-Men, Craig Kyle and Christopher Yost, making their thoughts and planning of what could be connected known. While something like the Hulk episode of the show connecting pretty directly to the short film is one thing, as it's pretty much confirmed to be true, stuff like connecting it to the other shows or even connecting Spectacular Spider-Man come from things like a tweet from Christopher Yost saying, yes, the Spider-Man in Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes was originally intended to be the same as Spectacular Spider-Man. So the keyword there that I see is intended, which doesn't mean it actually played out that way. Now, there's nothing wrong with wanting to connect everything here through your own headcanon for fun. That's great, and it does make for a fun little pocket Marvel universe that runs between these shows. But outside of that, there is nothing officially doing that. I just think it's kind of cool that you really can connect all these together. One of the best aspects of the show is the use of all the X-Men characters. We get some really cool spotlights on lesser-known mutants and play into what our preconceived notions are about familiar ones, only to see how even then they can still surprise you. I think a character like Emma Frost is a great example of how she is brought into the fold, as even Logan is suspicious of her from the start, but she comes off as a character that is only trying to help, and honestly, for a good bit, she just really does do that, giving this newly formed group of X-Men the chance to find and rescue Xavier, and beyond that, locate other mutants. But it really comes to a head with your perception of her being good or bad towards the end of the season, learning what her intentions may have been all along, but even on top of that, how this gets flipped even more, making her one of the more interesting characters with some very well written character development to follow. Now, on the other hand, because they squeeze so much into the series, and for the fact that it's also called Wolverine and the X-Men, a solid amount of more important characters don't get too much time to show off their powers or get a deep focus put on them outside of moments here and there. Obviously, Logan and his personal stories take the front seat of the narrative, so there is some good and some bad because of that, but overall, I'd say it's mostly good, and the characters who do get more impactful moments do stand out, and I don't feel that they were rushed or sidelined just in favor of Logan or something else to push the plot forward.
Wolverine and the X-Men is coming up next. Mutant power continues.
I honestly am just surprised at how mature and sometimes dark the series would feel. Not once did it ever feel like certain elements outside of stuff like violence had to be toned down or pulled back to tell this story. There's constant, intense character drama, plots that involve political fear-mongering to push agendas, traumatic experiences that haunt characters in mental and physical ways, and so much more that can be a mirror pointed out to our own world, and it really embodies what has always made X-Men so special. It fundamentally understands what X-Men has represented, and tackles covering topics in the same vein. The only thing that would have benefited the show beyond this is to see where it could have gone. Where would the series have taken all of these characters, and what other threats would lie ahead that Logan would have to lead the X-Men into facing to save the future of their existence. But this, well, it would never really be known because the end of the first season is the end of the series in general. Wolverine and the X-Men was pretty much doomed from the start thanks to disagreements and mismanagement with how the production was going from basically its conception, potentially. Things are kind of messy for the information in this timeline of potential events, so despite still getting a full season to come out of everything, the series wouldn't get this season 2 that it was supposed to, leaving a lot of fans to speculate over the years as to what the heck happened and why did we never get a concrete answer to the show being seemingly canceled. The most obvious point to look to is the fact that there was this massive purchase of Marvel by Disney, and with that, a partial or full wiping of the slate across any board that Disney could touch at that point that wasn't still owned by Fox or even Sony was bound to happen. Then you'd hear that it was more of a financial problem between those who were funding the show's production, but there was never any true evidence to back up any claim, just a lot of rumors kind of floating online and what you could just presume happened. All that we would know for sure is that Wolverine and the X-Men would not be getting this second season, and that was basically confirmed thanks to Marvel Animation Age. It wasn't until more recent years where speculation on what happened led to some more concrete answers, like Marvel potentially axing the show behind the scenes because of how much trouble the production was having, and they wanted to make sure that they looked as good as possible for when Disney came in to acquire them. Another given testimony was in relation to the well of money just drying up from those who were funding the series, and continuing on further than this when trying to move the series into in-house self-funding, not really being sure how they can make this all happen properly. And also, there was too much tension between Marvel and Fox, as Marvel would rather take X-Men down and not push any aspect of it to give Fox nothing to work with when it came to their ownership and use of Marvel properties like the X-Men that they had the rights to. And that's its own whole longer story that has nothing else to do with this story. Now, in the end, you can go on and speculate nearly every aspect of this until the end of days, but I think the most accurate and most detailed account is from the content creator Pillar of Garbage, who goes to great lengths in a couple of videos to really break down what the possibilities could be, to then coming back and debunking what is probably fake, finding out new information, and even directly speaking with one of the writers on the show who has first-hand accounts of how the production went and how things pretty much fell apart. So I highly implore you to check out Pillar of Garbage's videos on this topic. I will have them linked below. I found them extremely fascinating, and I appreciate the level of depth that was taken when the opportunity to actually learn more about what happened came up. And outside of those reasons for why the show ending after one season makes it pretty sad, it was also because of where season 1 ends and where all of the potential future plans for a season 2 could have gone. After the series greatly uses the amount of episodes it had to tell a pretty complex story that pulls in bits and parts of other famous and well-known X-Men comics to tell something that feels both unique and familiar, we sadly get left on a note that cuts things off for us ever to see where this next part of the story was going to go. The series had so much lore and character-driven plotline stuffed into it that it was honestly impressive that it never felt like it was giving you too much information to handle at once. You can easily get lost in the investment side because you truly care about each point of focus the story takes you in. But in the end, when all of these converging moments come together, you end the season with some pretty nice payoffs and what feels like a mostly happy ending for the X-Men saving the day and everything, but there are some loose ends that get left up in the air, and we're given a major moment right before the credits that leads into the Age of Apocalypse storyline being the main setup for where season 2 and potentially beyond would be going. Sure, it's one dystopian future story for another, but getting to see the final moment of the series be Apocalypse walking out of his pyramid to wave hello at a crowd of people while Mr. Sinister and an eye-patch Cyclops by his side really leaves you wanting more. Much like how this season showed us some more one-off stories or segues into bringing in some awesome characters on the side, season 2 was set to do the same thing, and it's also another really big reason as to why the show not getting this second season really stinks.
Wolverine of the X-Men is coming up next. Mutant power continues.
From the stuff that we do know, aside from seeing some scripts for the second season that were also worked on and getting to see some concept art, we were set to see Deadpool, for one, make his way into the series, where he apparently would have been involved in a storyline with X-23. So with the addition of a bunch of new characters and bringing in smaller used ones from the first season to expand their roles in the second, there wasn't much planning or at least work done on the second season that clues us in to what we were truly missing. Only small amounts of hype from the base loose ideas given. In an interview with Inverse, one of the show's directors and character designer Stephen Gordon said, "I'm not sure how any of these characters were going to be used. I was just being given the basic designs by the character designer. My job was to do expressions and attitudes for them." Stephen also notes in this interview a bit more about why we didn't get a second season, saying they couldn't agree on who would give the larger percentage of the money towards it and who would own the bigger percentage and so forth. And so it just imploded, even though they had a surefire guarantee for a second season. They just could not work it out, which is weird to me. Hey, it's weird to me too, probably weird to every other fan of the series as well, but look, the inner workings of the business side of entertainment is a brutal world of no one really wanting to be funding something, and most times, money is the reason why something doesn't work out. So hopefully, between these statements and everything that Pillar of Garbage uncovered through their research, paints a better understanding of what actually happened to the show, as it was supposed to have this season 2 it never got. It sucks though. I hate that there are so many shows, especially ones as well done and exciting as this, that get stuck not being able to finish telling their story. The main benefit that Wolverine and the X-Men has over most shows that get unfortunately left in this situation is that it was still able to tell a mostly complete story from start to finish. Sure, there are some loose threads out there, and a fun introduction to what is going to be the main focus of that next season, but the main story focusing on Logan having to become this leader-like character to help prevent this terrible future feels really fulfilled, despite where the series could have taken all of these characters moving forward. For that alone though, I can fully recommend giving your time to this series because you will still get a resolution to the main story coming together. Plus you'll have so many awesome fights and scenes with some really cool characters, both main series mutants and cameos from the world of Marvel. We'll probably never get a continuation of this specific story in the world of the X-Men, especially with Disney and Marvel already picking an older X-Men series to go back to and continue, but at least this series has a solid enough ending where that's okay. You never know though, you can't really say never ever these days. Heck, did you hear that Class of 3000 is coming back? Yeah, that's pretty random. Go check out my old video on that show if you want to relive some more nostalgia. But for now, what are your thoughts on Wolverine and the X-Men? Did you enjoy what it had to offer? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to leave a like on this video and to subscribe for more videos coming soon. But until then, later.
Alrighty, man. I didn't know what happened to the show because it was on CW. I didn't know it was on Nickelodeon. That's the thing. I didn't know where it went. I thought CW just lost. I didn't know it went to Nickelodeon because, like I said, I wasn't watching Nickelodeon. Nor was I watching cartoons like that. Like the most cartoons I was watching was like Naruto, One Piece. Well, those aren't cartoons, those are anime. But you get what I'm saying though. Like I wasn't really big on it. Like animation show wise, like Naruto, One Piece, Dragon Ball, that was about it. Then I just dipped. That's when your boy was outside with these hoes. You know what I'm saying? Boy was outside with these hoes. But anyways, that's just gonna about do it for this one. I will see you all in the next video. Till then, peace out.